Record now. It should let you know.
Got it.
Perfect. So I'm here with Alex and Karissa. They are from the great state of Washington. And we just wanted to talk a little bit about how they got into Nirvana. We're all friends in our group. And, what you think about the case, why you sort of decided at some point that you didn't believe it was a suicide. And let's just start with some introductions so everybody knows me. Karissa, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Karissa. I'm a mom. I'm mostly an activist, occasional artist, and musician. And yeah, I live in Washington. Those are the basics about me.
Perfect. And Alex?
Hi, my name's Alex, Alex Lightspeed, actually. Not my original name, but it's my artist name and my family name now. My kids are the Lightspeeds.
I love that.
And I'm a 40-year-old man that has been interested in Nirvana since he was 9 years old, like right as the murder occurred, or the death occurred, if we're like investigating this, sort of with a neutral eye. It's influenced not specifically the death, but the Nirvana and sort of Kurt Cobain's messages about how he came from almost nothing and then really struggled and just found sort of like never gave up this passion that he had. If you really look back, like there was nothing immediate about Kurt's success, even though his life was short, like his success had a lot to do with the fact that he had a very unique perspective. He was a very introspective artist. He rejected a lot of conventional wisdom of what music was supposed to be, and he had a sound that is like, one thing that I mentioned, I'm also a musician. I don't want to say I'm successful, but I'm a semi-successful synthwave artist, which is sort of like 80s synth and guitar inspired music that's made with kind of modern drums and things like that. I have a album that was pressed to vinyl and stuff, but a lot of that I can kind of attribute to this sort of, I've been trying to be a musician since I was 13 years old, and I first picked up a guitar, and I wanted to like learn how to do stuff like, like Kurt or like Nirvana, kind of thing. And I've put it down many, many times in my life, and then found that I'm like, okay, I really am passionate about that. I'm not necessarily like a very proficient guitarist, and so there was a lot of like times in my life I was like, well, everyone around me is better than me, so like, or like I can't do really complex things, so how will my music stand out from anybody else's? And I think that within that, there was a lot of influence from Kurt, and I guess I got off track on who I am, so I'm sorry
No,
about
that's part of who you are. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
I'm also a YouTuber. I build custom cars, specifically 80s Pontiac Fieros, and I have a YouTube channel dedicated to that has about 3,500 subscribers, but it's not really relevant to this case, other than I have been interviewed quite a few times, and I understand a little bit about how to interact with people via social media.
Perfect. And I mean, that's so important in this case, I think, too, because what we've noticed too in the group and stuff is like we're always incorporating other people's ideas and we're all trying to work together on this thing, which I think has been really nice because sort of in the past 30 years, it's been sort of, one or two people trying to work on the case. And it's really nice to have a collective of people who are smart. And, it was like that old, what's that documentary, Must Love Cats, where they found that guy and stuff. And I mean, we're seeing that a lot now,
Oh, don't fuck with cats? Is that what you're
Oh,
talking
that's what it is. Yes, yes, yes. What did I say? Don't mess
Must
with
love
Don't mess
cats.
with cats. Well, I can see why you
Hey,
said
but they
that.
were all cat lovers that were like,
Yes,
don't
okay.
fuck with cats. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes, okay, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And then, like just every 2020 or Dateline I see is like, and this podcaster brought this, this closed case back into, or this cold case back into people's consciousness. Or so I think that, us getting the word out is definitely helping, and just getting eyeballs on what Joe said, and the forensics that we have now. I think people didn't quite realize, now that the internet is here, we can all look at those photos, and now we have people talking about things like blood spatter on Kurt's hand, and positioning of the shotgun, etc. So it's definitely an interesting time, more so than 30 years ago.
Well, I think two things that really should be like remembered here. There's one side where people are like, hey, you internet sleuths aren't gonna figure out something that the police didn't figure out for 30 years or what have you. And then there's the or you're not actually a scientist, or you're not actually somebody who's allowed to figure these things out. You're a conspiracy theorist, you're this or
Right.
that. And I think a lot of that dismisses the fact that this is a totally new and unprecedented age as far as information sharing, which is what the internet provides. And we've seen a lot of things come to light that have been dead for more than 30 years
Yeah,
because people have interest in them, outside of, we can't expect our government agencies to always have either our best interests at heart, or let's just get down to it, the funds to be continuously investigating things for extended periods of time. Like,
absolutely.
honestly, I've had to tell my wife this a few times. I was like, just because somebody does something horrible doesn't mean that justice will be served, and
No.
this goes down to like the smallest level, like, maybe somebody's kid got molested or something. Not that's that small, but comparatively to Kurt's murder,
Yep.
and I was like, and she's like, the police will definitely investigate this. And I was like, maybe not,
Yeah.
because if there's not enough manpower and there's not enough money, like every minute somebody from a federal agency spends on something is like somebody's looking at it as a dollar,
Yeah.
and because of that, like, they're not just allowed to just investigate what they feel is, you know, uh interesting or prevalent. They have
Totally.
like assignments, and a lot of assignments, if you've ever watched any I would hope most of these people would be subscribed, interested in some true crime stuff. But if you watch any of these sort of murders that have been solved after a long time, they spent 20 years
Oh yeah.
before they got to a cold case unit, before they were reinvestigated. There was no money to continuously investigate it. And of course, things that are happening now are much more like, they're probably the focus.
Yeah. Oh, exactly right. And especially with the Seattle PD. I mean, I think since COVID, they've been pretty short staffed. And I mean, we know that we've tried to talk to people there. We've sent people in, and yeah, their main branch downtown isn't even open. So that's exactly right. So Karissa, let's talk about how you first found out about Nirvana.
Yeah, well, I was born in the 90s, but I was not a teenager in the 90s. So Kurt and Nirvana had already like come and gone before I got into them. But yeah, I became a Nirvana fan around middle school, I think probably 13 or 14. I remember having a Nirvana t-shirt in my middle school. So it's got to be around that time. And my older sister, she was like kind of getting into punk rock music. And so I was like trying to branch out. And I just remember my mom had a CD stand and she had like 10 CDs. Like it wasn't even that many CDs. Like she had Madonna and I think Van Halen and Pearl Jam's 10 and Nirvana's Nevermind. And I don't know, I just thought it looked cool. I listened to the album, totally blew me away, of course. It also felt familiar because I'd probably heard some of those songs before, just on the radio growing up. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I just remember like looking at the inner sleeve of Nevermind with Kurt, his lyrics all mixed up, and I just thought they were like just mysterious and dark and cool and punk rock. And I just totally loved it. I was totally obsessed. I even had a longtime boyfriend who everybody called Nirvana Kid. It's like basically, yeah, I just immediately glommed onto him because I was like, just that into it. I also started to learn to play guitar, and I learned a lot of Nirvana songs, and kind of to what Alex was saying, like, yeah, kind of Kurt kind of made me feel like anybody could play guitar and you didn't have to be super great, but you could like write great songs. And yeah, I loved that. I had like the unplugged tab book. Um
That
and
tab
yeah,
book is horrible, by the way. I'm like we've been me and a couple other people that have and other YouTubers have been like they look through those Nirvana tab books, and I used to think they were like the gospel, I mean, like this is obviously how it was played, right? But it turns out they just send some guy to like be like, hey, figure out how to play this, how you think it should be played. It's not, nobody from Nirvana is consulted, obviously. They were made after Kurt's death, and a lot of times they're just like, who thought this was the best way to play this? You can watch the videos, and it's like Kurt did something really easy, like right next to it, like move down one string, but they want you to go, 12, yeah, they want you to go 12 frets down, for something.
Studio
right. They don't even
musicians.
teach you how to like hold the chords or anything. Yeah, it's like this would just be way easier if I could just learn the chords and read them, and yeah, learn a couple power chords and no, I totally get that. Yeah.
So Nirvana for you was, I guess, sort of more like, I mean, not quite, but where like the Beatles would be for me, John Lennon was, died, I think, when I was 5. So, it's like, the Beatles are gone, but you got into them as much as, I guess, as much as I got into the Beatles. So
I
you
love the
just,
Beatles, by the way.
right? I know, the huge,
So
huge
much,
Beatles
so
fan.
totally so much, there's so much there, but yeah.
Right? I know we could do another Beatles
Yeah,
podcast. I
Beatles
know.
podcast.
It would be
There's probably
amazing.
enough Beatles
Oh
podcasts.
my gosh, right? I know I watch numerous ones, but so yeah, I mean, I think there is just something that Kurt, he had that thing, where I think, yeah, a lot of bands started because of Nirvana, because they felt that that was, he didn't have any connections. He was just, this guy from Aberdeen, and he didn't have any money, and he was not the world's greatest guitar player, and obviously musically gifted. But so Kurt is gone, as you're liking the music, etc. And at what point did you go, holy shit, maybe he didn't actually take his own life?
I don't know when it was, but it was like pretty early on. Like I feel like I did believe the suicide story for some amount of time. I kind of bought into the aesthetic of the, grumpy, depressed junkie or whatever. But I don't know. It was that boyfriend that I had. I don't know. He discovered it on the internet or something, and we got Who Killed Kurt Cobain and the Love and Death books, and we read those, and it was just like, wow, there is so much here. I mean, there's enough in those books from back then to like convince anybody, like the forensics and we could go on about that, the handwriting, Courtney's handwriting practice sheet, like all of that. So I mean, it didn't take long before I was pretty um, convinced. But the other thing too, I wanted to mention is like before that, I was kind of I became a whole fan. I became a Courtney Love fan. She just seemed like the girl Kurt to me. She was like outspoken, like she was kind of the opposite of anything that I was, as like an insecure, shy teenager. And so I just saw her as like brave and cool and like just like the classic rock star but a female. And so I don't know, I felt pretty like duped by Courtney. Um and yeah, I mean, yeah, from then on, pretty much after reading those books, I've just been going down intermittent rabbit holes over the years and following developments, and yeah, it's been, I mean, 15 or so years now for me.
That's
just following
amazing.
this case. Yeah.
Oh, time flies. And okay, so Alex, tell us about how you found Nirvana.
Well, so I'm I'm long-winded. I'm gonna make this as short as I can, right? But when I was listening, when I was 8 or 9, my dad got me my first Discman on clearance from Kohl's, and I had a genuine Sony Discman, which were usually like $300-400 back then. I think he spent like 150 on it. So 150 in
Wow.
1992 money,
Yeah.
like and my dad like is passionate about music, not Nirvana, but he likes music, And I got a copy of Elvis's Golden Records because I liked my dad always had oldies on the radio, so I liked that, and that was my first CD. And then I had uh I think I had the Back to the Future soundtrack. I had
Of
like
course.
two, but I wasn't like I didn't it wasn't until I went over to my friend's house and they had like a little band, he genuinely could play. He had friends that could play all the drums and bass, and they had a real band in their garage,
Amazing.
and he could play guitar, and he was 10 years old, and their band, I still remember the name of their band. It was called Grounded.
Oh, perfect.
Usually like,
Yeah.
10 year old,
Like
10-year-old,
wires.
but he was the one who played Nirvana for me for the first time. And this would have been probably in December of 93,
Okay.
that he played. And I was like really interested in it, but I only visited. He lived in Illinois, and that's where my dad lived. I only visited my dad 2 weeks around Christmas and then all summer, so I heard Nirvana right before Kurt died. I was like, this is really cool. I'm like interested in this, and my friend seems really cool, But it wasn't until I came back in summer of 94 that then I like really got deep into it. And of course, he was overwhelmingly talking about it because Kurt had just died,
Yeah.
and so it was like he had gone to, I guess he had gotten to see him,
Oh,
like right before. I mean, as a 10-year-old, went to see Nirvana like in Chicago, like last tour,
amazing.
and I was and I felt like I had just missed the boat, like I basically now I'm like this is now my favorite band, like my favorite thing, like that. I like was want to learn more and more about it, but I'm never going to be able to. It's never going to be tangible for me, and it wasn't like never going to be tangible by years. It was never going to be tangible by like I could have made that happen if I had known it was going to be important, if somebody had just
Totally.
showed me a little earlier or what have you. And I found that I didn't know a lot about Kurt's death, about whether it was, other than what Kurt Loder said on MTV,
Right.
information was hard to come by because like I didn't have access to internet for a few more years after that. Um, but then I remember the next summer he pulled out the Foo Fighters record, like the original, you know, and I was like, well, this is something,
It's better than nothing, I
It's like it's
guess.
like it's like
Right.
I was like it's not like and I do really like I mean honestly the first two Foo Fighters albums are probably the best in my mind, so beside that point, quickly fast forward, uh when I was 14, my dad had driven across the country and just he was living in his car because my mom stopped sending us to visit him, and he was like not having that. And I was, so we got not get into it heavily. I was being abused by my stepfather at the
Mm.
time, and I ended up like running. I ended up living with my dad for 2 weeks in 1998, in his car because I told my stepdad that I was like that anything would be better than being here, and that I wanted to live with my dad. And he says, your dad's homeless. So, and I was like, that would be better than being here. And he's like, go try it. you know?
Wow.
And my mom was like appalled. She was like, what are you doing sending our 14-year-old to live in a car with his father? And my stepdad was so sure I would hate it and be happy to be back home, you know? But I ended up having like one of the best 2 weeks of my life because my dad loved me, and we went to McDonald's in the morning, and like I went to school, and I didn't, and but I went to a independent movie theater because I had I didn't have any freedom at my mom's and my stepdad's house, but my dad was interested in, not making my life better, or like giving me some like freedom, and like to being kind to me. And I went and saw Kurt and Courtney in an independent movie theater in 1998. Like, and that was so like, I mean, I had no idea what I was getting into. I was just seeing a movie about Kurt Cobain. Like,
Yeah.
that's literally how little I knew about it. And I was like, why is this so hard to go see? Like, why is like there's no theaters that have this movie, but where we were,
Courtney was making sure that
She
yeah, but
was,
like,
yeah.
were getting
but
seen,
I
yeah.
was super lucky because like one of the only theaters in town that were showing it was like 5 blocks away from where we were parking the car at night. And if you see that, seeing that movie even now, like there's so much there, like and
Even how
obviously
flawed it is,
forward
there's so
now.
much there, like,
What?
Yeah.
yeah.
What do you?
Oh, just even how flawed it is, like, with the methadone test or whatever, and, like,
Yeah,
but there's still
exactly.
so much, yeah.
There's still so much there. Even that early on, there was so much where you'd like, why are we not reopening this case? And there's that letter from the police department where they're talking about right before that one guy gets fired, where he's like, hey, I think, this we got this guy who took this lie detector test, and he says he was offered $50,000 to kill Kurt Cobain, and the guy who administered the lie detector test is very reputable. I think that means that we need to investigate this farther.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this inner office Seattle Police Department email, but like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
you've
think
seen it, right?
I
Yeah,
think that was the biggest opportunity for the case to be reopened in the
right. And
past
he's
30
like, I
years.
recommend we investigate this more. Well, um, I don't quote me directly on this, because this is what happens in these podcasts, right? Where like, or anywhere where if you say one thing wrong, then you didn't know what
Oh,
you were
you
talking
don't
about,
say.
right?
I've
Like,
never heard
and,
that
and
before.
but,
Oh my
but
goodness.
my
There's gonna be a whole video about it.
yeah,
Yes.
my brief
Like,
memory about it was that like a few weeks later, that guy that made that recommendation at the police department was let go,
Oh,
and he was
interesting.
let go, uh uh I guess, because one, again, this is also rough information, but I hit one of his detectives under him had taken some money from a crime scene.
Oh, you're talking about Detective Cameron.
Right, and
Yeah.
then he
Yeah.
put it
yeah, Sergeant
put it
Cameron.
back,
Yeah.
and he did, and this other guy didn't tell on him. Like, he
Yeah.
allowed him to make it right, as
Yeah.
opposed to making an official thing. And then they're like, okay, you're gone. And I'm not just saying that he's gone because he was interested in the Kurt Cobain, case. I can't connect those two dots directly, but it's one of those things where when you look at this case, how many things can you put over in this category that's very, very suspicious and unlikely to be coincidental? Like,
Totally.
we can't count it as evidence, but we can look at these piles of things that there should not be this many like weird occurrences in this case that look really bad for like the suicide theory, but
Totally.
they're all over the place. In fact,
Oh,
it's
Yeah,
flattering.
medical examiner, personal friends of Courtney Love. Like, how crazy is that? Like, I don't know how that I mean, I don't want to say that that is like a complete conspiracy, but what a coincidence. And he obviously shouldn't have been involved because of that
Didn't he
conflict of
say at
interest.
some
I'm not
point
saying
that,
like he somehow
yeah,
was there to, to rig the case for Courtney or anything, but it's just like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there's a million things like that.
he
well, I
did
think he
say
said
that.
that he shouldn't be
Yeah.
involved. I think he admitted at some point, I probably was too close and shouldn't have been involved, you know? So, of course, now he's dead and we can't talk to him. Some base jumping accident, right? You know, all these key people that, could have something to tell us about this case. This
All
is another,
gone.
they're mysteriously or not so mysteriously dead. We can't talk to them,
Yeah, now with
and
Jennifer Adamson too, like,
right, right. It's like
and now
all
that,
these,
Joe Burns is like, she was there. I mean, we knew that she was in the periphery and that maybe her death was odd. And then, but now that he's come out, it's like, damn, wish we would have had that.
right, all these accidents, right, or what, or like Kristen Paff's death is suspiciously accidental, like, and none of the, it doesn't add up. The pages of her diary that right when Kurt is missing are gone, you know
Yeah.
what
Well, an
what
interesting thing about Sergeant Cameron, I think, too, is that so he's a good, he was he was certainly a smart policeman. He worked on the Bundy case. I believe there's an Anne Rule book where she talks about what a great cop Sergeant Cameron was. So the interesting thing is, though, he takes an early retirement because he helped the other cop cover up some money that he had stolen from a crime scene.
right.
And that though does go to show you how much he's willing to protect the other police that he works with, the other, So even going, I mean, I still don't see how you would go to that crime scene and not know that it was set up. It looks like something from a movie. Let's make sure the plane ticket is in his pocket. Let's put the drug kit right here. And like it looks just ridiculous. But that goes to speak to, I think, a little bit about how Detective Cameron views the brotherhood, I think, of being in the police and how much he was willing to go to bat for them. So,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. I think that you have to take those kind of things in consideration. And, there is something, if I could interlude just really quickly, there's something I wanted to tell anybody who's listening to this, because uh, I've been thinking about this before we had this podcast. There's a lot of people that are coming out about you and Lisa. They're like, these people, like, don't have any credentials to do this. Therefore, how do you think they're gonna be able to help solve this case? They're internet sleuths, they're this or that, right? And I wanted to start out with a statement that nothing about me and Chris is special in any way. We're just, two people that are investigating this case independently as well, because we have interest and it's affected like our lives in some way, and we believe there's been an injustice. But to say that independent people can't influence the outcome of a case would be not looking at the global state of anything that's going on right now. It'd be completely ignoring everything that's happened over the last 5 to 10 years. I
Yeah.
mean, right now you can, it's all of, like, one of the most popular things on Netflix is these Mendez brothers,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like
Menendez
their
brothers.
case
Yeah.
is like up. They did a 10 episode special and a 2 hour like movie on them. And just last, and that debuted 2 weeks ago. And just last Wednesday, the DA from the Los Angeles County met with all the families of the Mendez brothers, right? And said that they're looking at new evidence and re-examining the case for potential, like, either resentencing or retrial, you know,
Absolutely.
and that has a lot to do with the fact that there was a huge TikTok campaign about the fact that they believed that they had been abused. Now, this relates to our case a lot because in the 90s and the late 80s, it was unbelievable that a respectable a respectable older cis male was raping his children. You
Mhm.
know, that the fact that they and the fact that they didn't say it until after they were arrested, and it wasn't the first thing they said, everyone was like, well, there's no, they're just making it up. There's no way that that's happening, ignoring the fact that that there is so much shame in
I
this,
know,
in these kind
yes.
of things, where like, and even after being arrested, they were trying to protect their father's name and their name of their family from shame, because
Yeah.
that's what, especially in richer families, like your family name is, you know, pounded into you your
Yeah.
entire life to protect the reputation of the family. And we're talking about somebody that's coming from Cuba, so they have even more of this family connected background than maybe some, maybe other cultures might, or like, and it's just, it's only recently where we're like, oh, actually, you know, especially with Me Too and like other stuff coming out, that like, oh, actually, you know, powerful people do horrible things all the time,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
And so we're re-looking at things that were basically stamped, solved, stamped, like stamped, you know, like bullshit, you know, years ago. And in that case, you know, the apparently he wrote his cousin a letter about it happening 8 months before the murder, and they found that letter like in like, and it's, that's
Oh,
a new
good.
piece of evidence, as well as that guy was like a music, was an RCA head exec,
Yep.
and one of the bands, they had like a sort of Spanish
Menudo.
boy band, Menudo,
Yep.
right? Well, one of those kids was like, yeah, he did that to me, and he's willing to testify that. So now, like, is it so out of place? Is it like, you know, they didn't allow that into the second court case, you know,
I
so
know.
that, and
Yep.
anyway, enough of the Menendez brothers. But my point would be that that plenty of those people didn't have any credentials as well.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we don't have brains, that we don't have problem solving skills, that we don't have the willingness to put the passion into these things. I mean, I think that that gathering this evidence and like pouring things together in a useful, cohesive way is extremely beneficial. And
Totally.
just
And
as,
people should be empowered to do that. Like you have to,
right,
who keeps the government accountable? It's us. So,
Exactly right. And
you
you're
know,
an
and that's,
activist, Karissa, right? So
yeah,
you work on a lot of this type of stuff.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, they, yeah, I mean, and especially like local government and stuff, like, you know, if people aren't paying attention, if you're not being a watchdog, you know, they will try to get away with stuff.
Oh,
And, you know,
absolutely.
that goes the same for police departments, obviously.
And that's an interesting thing too, Alex, because when we first started doing this, I don't know that people know this, but we tried to talk to Captain Lowe, we tried to talk to Tom Grant, we tried to talk to other people that I won't mention, but they all said, I don't think you should do it this way. I think you should write a book. I think you should wait 2 years. I think you should do this. I think you should do that. And we were like, you don't understand the internet. You don't understand the power of things like TikTok, of Instagram, of YouTube, where we have had numerous media outlets write stories about us and they still aren't getting through. They're still being blocked by the lawyers. So we have to do it this way. We don't really have a choice, as to just go, well, let's just, yeah, wait and write a book on who's going to publish that book. No one's going to publish it. We
Yeah, then
know
only people that buy the book can read the book, and, like, it's like, why not just do
exactly.
YouTube or a
but
podcast, or
Exactly.
you have to get
okay,
the word
let's
out. Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
relate this to like something else that's a good comparison. But like, you know, a lot, what it'd be like telling somebody, well, you can't have a hit song unless you had been formally trained as a musician. You know,
Exactly right.
you're not
Yeah.
eligible to like, you're not an official musician person, so
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
cannot
it's
do anything
totally
productive.
elitist. It's
Right.
Oh,
something
And
it
that
right.
Kurt
And
is.
I
Cobain
mean, like,
himself would have rejected.
right, and like
Absolutely.
something Kurt totally would have rejected, right? You know, and
Yeah.
is the antithesis of what he was about, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we are allowed to analyze the facts that are available to us, and to, and to try as internet nobodies to figure this out. Like, everybody it has their fair right to try to make things better or find justice. This is not
Absolutely.
a yeah.
It shouldn't be something that is, being like anyone's gatekeeping from us. And, I mean, we'll just go back to the Natalie Wood one, basically that was a witness who came out, who the captain of the boat who wrote that book. So he wrote a book and he was a witness, and then they changed it to undetermined. So I think, saying that people again don't have that power. Michelle McNamara wrote Gone in the Dark, about the Golden State Killer, is one of the big
I mean,
reasons.
how many people are actually uh who uh maybe they're not following other true crime things that were actually solved. I think if you were looking at this with a sort of neutral eye, you'd be like, yeah, actually a lot of times,
Totally.
your true crime sort of sleuths, or even just people. I mean, if you look at, a lot of these cold cases that are solved, the family didn't give up, or
Exactly.
somebody was like,
Yep.
I can't let this rest. And probably everyone around them was saying, you should give up on this.
Yep, exactly right. I
It,
know, and
like,
sometimes somebody doesn't have a family
yeah.
to do that, so it ends up being, someone else or a friend, or, so I
Or
think
sometimes the
that's
one who did it is your family, like with
exactly right,
Courtney.
and that
Right.
is that is unfortunately the truth. Um, so yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And the other thing too that I again, want, that we were talking about before this, but because we're blessed to now have an investor, we aren't just talking about this on the internet. We are doing other things that we believe are going to help reopen this case. So we have that. Um, so yeah, when people just say that, I mean, we are talking about it on the internet, and every eyeball, every person, we change their mind. We get emails every day. People, oh my God, I fought with my wife for 20 years about this. Now she believes me that Kurt Cobain was murdered. Oh, just like every
I,
you
My
know?
mom believes me now.
Oh,
dude,
good. Oh, that's so
I
good.
definitely had that scenario. Although I think I think I had my wife on board after a while. She had
You wore her down.
yeah, well, she made a t-shirt a while back that said Courtney did it.
Oh, perfect.
It's
I
like,
love
Oh,
it.
nice. And she's
I
like,
was like, and she was like wearing it around for a while, or maybe it was fuck Courtney left. I don't fucking know what it was. It was like it meant the same thing. It meant Courtney did it to me, right?
Yeah,
Um,
perfect.
and it I mean, it's one of the oldest motives in the world, for
Oh,
money,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like,
Uh,
and you can see that she wanted power and money long before Kurt's death. Like
yeah,
that, she's been open about it her entire life, you know.
and talked about it in
absolutely.
the days he was missing. And, he's supposedly supposed to be suicidal and she knows it and she's desperately searching for him. Yet she's talking about Lollapalooza and a divorce and money.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. If Kurt had been a woman, this case would have been reopened. There is enough of a case for domestic abuse but again, like you're talking about with the Menendez brothers, the shame around that, and the
Can we
shame
talk
around
about the
Kurt
fact
being,
that drug that, and this is and I remember this from that time, but the war on drugs was so intense then that, like, every adult and kid that didn't have personal experience with people using substances thought that every person that did any drug was just a horrible human and didn't deserve,
yeah,
like energy or respect. And that is, if I had to, if I mean, it's all it's speculation, right? But like in my mind, the police department wasn't deliberately involved in the cover up. They were complicit because they were ready to ignore a another drug related death from somebody they didn't respect. They
absolutely.
were
Yeah,
immediately prepared to not have to do any extra paperwork on, like, some dumb heroin user that took his own life, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
You know what's really interesting, just on that point, and I don't think that there's any reason I can't say this, but one of the forensic specialists we're working with said, I've never seen pictures of so many police officers just standing around. I have seen crime scene photos and crime scene photos, 3,000 cases worth, and I have never seen so many police just standing around doing nothing. And
I think
when
Lowe and Grant said that too. They were like,
that's
"This is odd." They
interesting.
obviously
It's so
called their
weird.
buddies up. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh,
interrupt you.
no, no,
Yeah.
not at all. No, that's so weird, and that's a really great point. I mean, we know he let they let the electrician in to go look at the body, and when I told the forensic specialist that, he was shocked that they did not. Of course, they didn't, secure the scene, but I mean, we all know. I believe that the word he used was incompetent. So we'll stick with incompetent instead of a cover up, and go from there. So, Carissa, tell me a little bit more about what some of the evidence is, or what are the things that you find that are really strong, uh, you know, sort of proof that it was a homicide and not a suicide.
Oh, I'm glad you asked that because I I thought about that ahead of time.
Oh, good.
Okay, in order of priority, probably the heroin levels. I was gonna mention too, in my early 20s, I was a heroin addict for a few years. So this is why heroin addicts know that Kurt Cobain didn't kill himself, because I knew nobody that would ever fill up a syringe. My boyfriend was big, tall, and I mean, he was the biggest user I knew. I mean, I know this is all anecdotal. We should stick with, the science and cases before or whatever. But, that was just something for me that I was just like, no, no, nobody shoots up like multiple syringes of heroin. Anyway, I mean, that was always just the big one for me, the 3 times the lethal dose.
So you
The
mean
bullet.
you're trying to say that, like, they would have to have somebody else help them take like, if you're using so much heroin, you need to do a second and third needle, you mean that normally somebody else would help them take the second and third needle?
I've never seen anybody take a second or third needle ever need that whatsoever.
Okay.
Whatsoever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
maybe there are people out there, but
well,
I
there'd be
had
so
that was
much
not my
there'd
experience.
be so much in that syringe, right? It's like a lot of, I imagine, and I have never done heroin, but I mean, I've done substances. I mean, I understand a little bit out here, but like, I would figure that most doses would not be a full syringe full, you're
And
not.
it's an IV, it hits you immediately. There's no time. I mean, isn't that what Szynski was saying, was that, oh, well, he was gonna overdose, but he like had enough time to like do all the shit. And I don't
Yeah.
know, was the note pre-written then or whatever? Like,
Yeah.
no, it hits you within seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody's had an IV in the hospital, you know that,
Yeah,
so.
and that's exactly what Szynski said, is that he would have died from the overdose anyway. I mean, you can't die twice. And he just thinks he had 2 minutes to do all that stuff, roll the sleeves down, put the needles away, do all that. Where we know it was 10, 15 seconds, that he would have had in between that. So yeah, exactly right. So okay, so you've got the heroin. Okay, what else is really, concrete in your brain that this means homicide?
I mean, the bullet on the wrong side of the room that, implies an obstruction happened, or, or the crazy gun flip theory that I'm gonna
I
go with, there
know.
was an obstruction. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, a big one for me is plans for the future. He was divorcing Courtney. Courtney admitted it, at least on those tapes. Um, he had told Rosemary Carroll that. I mean, why would you divorce somebody, especially the mother of your child, before killing yourself, Um, and then, yeah, the big one for me has always been Courtney's handwriting practice sheet. What good reason would there be? I mean, a lot of people like to analyze the note, and I have my thoughts about the note. Like, it doesn't read like a suicide note to me. The thank you from the pit of my burning, nauseous stomach, when we know that he no longer had a burning, nauseous stomach, um, you know, stuff like that. But the handwriting practice sheet right there, like
Yeah.
that there's just no good explanation for that. And then of course we know too that we have instances of her forging Kurt's handwriting as well.
Yep.
That I know you guys know about. Um, what else?
I'm not going to interrupt you, by the way. I'm going to let you finish your whole thought about this. I've been thinking about it. I'm like,
Well,
I
let
have
me
something
know
to
if
say,
I
but
forget anything.
no,
Or,
but
yeah,
I
if
like,
you have
I'll
additional.
come in and like, and say, I'm going to hold my thought.
I will say also, yeah, just the circumstantial stuff around Courtney, the inconsistent statements. One of like the later things that came out, which is a big one for me, is her Fuse interview in 2012, where she was kind of caught off guard and she was asked like, when did you talk to Kurt last? And I believe what she said was, it was ugly. It was about money. It was about Lollapalooza or whatever. And it's like, wow, that's weird because that's totally not what you told Charles Cross. And then when you look at, I mean, that that story is ridiculous. Why would Kurt say, no matter what happens, you made a great record? You're saying that to the mother of your child. Are there not other important things you
Oh
might
my
say to
God.
your you know what I mean? Like those aren't the strongest pieces of evidence in the courtroom, but for me, like I'm just like this is not, this just doesn't make sense. And I think that the last time she did talk to Kurt, it was probably ugly and about money and about a divorce and about Lollapalooza, and she let that slip at that time. So,
Do you think
um,
she sent something in with Pat to make Kurt leave Exodus? Why do you think he left?
well, that was weird. I actually just where did we see that recent? I hadn't heard that Pat had like showed up with a note.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I wasn't. I never really speculated why he had left. I mean, I know he was being called by Courtney. And I mean, if you're a heroin addict, you got to relapse a million times before you get clean. I could have seen him walking out the door just for that reason. Maybe it wasn't Courtney related, but yeah, I mean, if there's now we have Pat delivering a note. I mean, who knows? But obviously it's got to do with Courtney. Um anyways, yeah.
Absolutely. So Alex, so you guys became friends and just do you pretty much talk about the case? Is that you guys are
Yeah,
the
that's a,
Washington?
sorry. Yeah, that's the main thing we interact with. I'm friends with their partner
Perfect.
as well. He's a brilliant musician, and I've played in bands that are co-billed with bands he's been in. I kind of I actually reached out to her because I was rambling about the case, to one of my other mutual friends that does not care. And he was
Yeah.
like, who
Yeah, we
you
have
should
those.
talk
Talk
to.
to someone else.
You should talk to who will actually listen to you. Like, I was like, I don't have anybody to talk to about this. And I mean, like, I don't want to have a lot of cognitive dissonance where I just believe this because I want to believe it. There has to be evidence for it. And I have to also look at the evidence that might be against it and try to be objective. And being able to talk to somebody else and cross-examine each other, I feel like that helps me greatly. And you've helped me so much do that. And I actually really haven't told you how much I appreciate that. Been it's made me feel a lot more sane, and it's allowed me to continue to investigate this a little bit more, which hopefully helps somebody somewhere. I mean, one of the things that I really hope is that all this thought and this energy that I put in, it would be a dream to just do something that ended up helping the case, because
Yeah.
it it means that much to I don't want to speak for you, but I think to us both, that like I want to make a difference in a positive way. And I also really I think that I reached out to you, Michelle, because um you're so uh if you're part of your Patreon, which is free, to like you don't have to pay anything. Everyone's always telling everybody like, oh, they're just like scam out of money or whatever. I was like no, I've never seen anybody run a Patreon where the main tier is free, and with like they're out to, it's just a communication platform, and
Totally.
there is ways to help donate for money that you're gonna use to help the case, but it's not required. And
Totally.
like I think that your credibility has been attacked lately, and I don't know you personally, but I have a good judge of character, I feel like, and I feel like of all the entities that are all the planets and entities that are playing out trying to talk about this case right now, like you and Lisa seem to be the most down to earth, like easiest to talk to, and willing to hear out opinions that are different than yours. I mean, there has been a little bit of animosity recently between you and a few other groups, but you can track that. They initiate that. They say
Yeah.
volatile things, and I think that it's just so telling that they're attacking these two women, that are just trying to be helpful, that are spending a lot of their own money and time and energy to try to solve something, and all these men are here like like just like those B words, I was okay, like they're like it's just so gross to me. And I think that, I mean, I don't like when people speak for Kurt, but I would say that he would also be disgusted when somebody singles out people based on their sexual orientation or their gender or their color of their skin. Like, he was very, very clear about his feelings about those things. And it really hurts me that you guys are being so attacked when you're trying so hard to do the right thing. And you wonder, well, is there who what's the purpose in the attacks? Are we trying to create a lot of confusion so that nobody can be believed? Like, what is there more to this than just people having different opinions? Because it would behoove somebody, a guilty party, to attack you as well. And I'm not saying I don't have direct evidence for that, but you certainly can't say that it's not going on, you know?
Yeah.
And if I was somebody who had something to hide and I had any power, it would be pretty easy to get some people get some people on the internet to attack, and
Yeah.
government does this all the time. They create a
That's
lot of
I was gonna say that's like
confusion.
a classic CIA move, like
Right,
create
yeah,
Yeah.
they'd be like
areas in
too many
between
stories
people that should be
don't believe
allies,
anything.
Yes.
You
You
know?
know, I will say too that our forensic investigator, the first line of one of his emails to me was, Courtney has been very, very smart. And I won't really say too much more about what he's talking about, but we did talk about it prior to doing the podcast, but things
Yeah,
that she's
no.
done. And I hate ringing the feminist bell. And honestly, before this, like, I'm 49 this week and I've never really, I mean, we've all had our shit, don't get me wrong, but I mostly feel like I've been treated fairly well. I was in the tech industry and everybody there is like, they're like you, Alex, everybody there is really cool. And of course, sexism or misogyny happens within women as well, but I definitely have through this gotten the feeling that, you know what, as women, we're lucky to be in the room. We better be quiet. Just know where we should sit and not speak anything because we are not smart enough. And that's the interesting thing too, is I think the people who set this whole thing up to get Joe's interview, etc., never thought that we would do anything with it. I guess they thought they could control everything. And when they were lying and manipulating that situation with Joe Burns, telling him, oh, this isn't going to come out for 2 years, which that was never something that we had agreed to or thought. I think they thought they'd just be able to pull the strings and manipulate us. And perhaps the women that are in their lives are like that. I don't know. I'm not gonna, I have no idea, but definitely they did not count on us just wanting to get the information out. So I appreciate your kind words, but it's definitely been a learning experience where I've never felt really treated like, of course we've all been hit on and stuff, but never treated like, shut up because you're a woman.
I
And that's
I
definitely how it feels.
I
or
just
let the
wanted to
man lead.
voice
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to voice support of, like, hey, like, regardless, let's say you do have some facts like wrong, but
Yeah.
like that is no reason to brush you off, be disrespectful to you, to not try to have a equal like discussion. We're all trying to get like most of the parties here all say we all believe Kurt's murdered and we want justice for Kurt, except for the one guy that's like, oh, everyone who thinks Kurt was murdered is a total idiot, like that. I forget who he is. No, is he the knows what not what it means guy who's like the suicide? He's like a
Oh,
suicide
maybe.
believer. Yeah,
Oh, he could
there's
be.
one
Okay.
channel who just all they've done for
Oh,
10,
Sylvia.
15 years
I think
is
she's Sylvia Curdell. I believe she's, yeah. And
yeah,
she
is
might be
they
knows
just
not what it
put
means.
it
Yeah.
out like, oh well, like anybody who believes
Yeah.
that, and to call you a scam like is like totally dismissing anything you're trying to do, not looking at you must not be paying attention, like
Yeah.
you must know nothing about you and then just like, oh, like just we're it doesn't help us to like all dismiss each other. And I haven't seen you like constantly try to attack people that are, unless they have already come out and tried to discredit you. Like we're trying to solve the case and you're allowing people that aren't particularly connected to the case at all to contribute and help. And that's not something I'm seeing anywhere else. So, like, why don't, if you have a opinion that may be different, and if you don't believe something that's been said, or a viewpoint on this channel, why not come in and respectfully present your other evidence or other case so we can all figure this out? Why
Absolutely.
not work together? And you seem to be, I would tend to say that I haven't seen anybody else that's willing to do that. And that should really be telling to anybody looking at who do I want to talk to about this, about my feelings that Kurt Cobain was like potentially murdered, like what group do I want to get my information from, and I would want to get information from somewhere where they are accepting new information and they are processing it, they're answering questions with respect, they are like they are willing to change their beliefs based on, you know, uh, evidence to the contrary. And that this thing with the Daniel Clint is his name,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
So like, like they're if they you allowed them to come on and present evidence to the contrary, to like instead of just condemning them
Of course.
immediately, right? Now,
Because we
like,
want the truth.
We want
Everybody
the
wants the
truth.
right, we
truth,
want
not like
that's
to scapegoat
like
an
I really like
innocent
somebody who wants the
person.
truth, not just somebody that wants a story, my story to fit in this box. And if and whether anybody believes Joe Burns or not, like we can at least see that the questions that you directed to ask him were not leading,
Yeah.
and when you look at other interviews, they're like, especially, I'm not going to name any names, but if you look at other interviews with Joe Burns, they appear to be leading the witness. You're like leading
Oh
somebody
yeah.
who's trying
Oh
to
yeah.
remember
Yeah.
something from 30 years ago that's absolutely traumatizing to them.
I know.
You know,
Yeah.
uh,
It's true.
It's
and
painful to watch, honestly.
uh, you know, I'm not. We can't say whether Joe Burns is telling the whole truth or not. But we can say that it uh, it looks like it was very possible for him to be there at that time.
Yeah.
We look at people that could have been at that house that week when Kurt Cobain died. We're down to just a maybe under 10 humans like on the planet, right? And
Definitely.
Yeah.
and Joe Burns is definitely one of those people who might have been there.
Yeah.
And so it is different than other information we've gotten over the last 10 years, but the fact that there's a credibility that you can document that Joe Burns and Kurt Cobain were interacted, and that they and that he was down in that basement at some point, seeing
Mm.
all those boxes that were being ripped open, and if anybody, I just had a recent thing that happened where I have a friend up in Seattle that, you know, Seattle people, they have a lot of them are living at a little higher class than average in the state. Yeah, I don't, yeah, I don't expect you guys to all to know about Washington, but that area has a lot of tech, has a lot of
Right.
money, and people and things cost more there because everyone has more money there,
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things that was going on at that time is I was over helping a friend with his classic car, and he has a Microsoft job and makes quite a bit of money, and he just hired some movers on the spot to move all of his ex-girlfriend's items with her permission into boxes, and they came in and they boxed up everything in like one side of the house in 3 hours,
Wow.
and and then put it into a pod crate. Now they were like none of that. Uh, there's very limited descriptions of what's in those boxes. It's like
Right.
clothes, miscellaneous, electronics, or whatever, right? So if you can imagine the fact that they just got this house a couple months ago, and we know Kurt was busy on tour during the time. It's obvious that they hired movers to
Right. For
move all of
sure.
his
Of
stuff,
course.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Courtney's not sitting there doing it.
no,
No.
Courtney's not. So all their stuff was shoved into boxes and then put down in the basement, and none of them know what the hell is in them. So when Kurt's looking for something, he's just going to tear into a box, see if it's got the thing he's looking for, and leave the styrofoam peanuts if it's not what he wants, he's like moves on to the next thing, next box, and there's styrofoam peanuts on the ground, that
Totally.
really it's and the reason I bring this up is that we can't necessarily corroborate everything about Joe's story that night, but there are things that he has no reason to lie about that are easily that start to add up for
Yeah.
somebody who was at that house,
Yes.
at that house during that time frame,
Yeah.
and so that lends a little bit of like, hey, maybe we should look at what this guy is saying and see if we can find credible evidence to match it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what we're trying. I think that's what we're all trying to do here, is that we're like, this is eyewitness testimony. He says he was there. Do we have any reason to believe that he wasn't there?
Yeah.
Because we have things that are like obviously false that he said.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm like, hey, I'm not going to overly mention Tom, but I'm like, I have a lot of respect for the energy Tom has put in the case for the last 30 years. It's definitely helped us all forward, and getting the Soaked in Bleach documentary out, any involvement in that, kudos for doing that. Now, if you have evidence that you are holding on to about why there's no way Joe could have been there that night, then why not release it? Why not tell us? Because from what I can see from somebody who has been studying this case for as just an end user, right? But I've been studying this for 29 years.
Yeah.
That's when I saw, or 26, whatever, when I saw Kurt and Courtney, when I saw in 98. So in 98 to now. And I don't see anything about Joe's story like that says that is an automatic he wasn't there. It fits in with the other evidence that I believe.
It
Like,
fits like a
Yeah.
puzzle piece. I mean,
right.
it's like
Yes.
it doesn't answer everything, but yeah, I mean, like, oh yeah, I saw Kurt eat a Marie Callender's. Like, oh,
Right.
well, that fits what is stomach contents? Like, it just, yeah, it
And
just
being there
kind
on
of
the night
plugs
of the
in.
4th makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
supposedly, and you may or may not believe this, but supposedly on the third, Kurt was at the Cactus restaurant,
Right.
you know, and they had dessert first. And the guy, you know, the owner remembers him trying to pay with his card and it being declined, and then him having to use a check to pay for it, you know. And he remembers them talking about seeing a movie and that they were going to go see The Piano, which is a really weird movie, by the way, especially thinking about if you see The Piano in the context of this is probably the last movie Kurt ever saw, that
Right.
it feels really fucked up. But that's beside the point, you know. Um, all that said, like, makes sense with it being the following day that all this goes down into, you know, into the morning of the 5th, potentially, right? Is that what we're thinking?
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, it's interesting because I think when Tom first thought it was the second that Kurt died, because that's what he was told, because that's Chris Todd's theory. When he first thought it was the second, he said he could prove that Dylan was not there, but he wasn't hired until the third. So I would love to know how he could prove that Dylan was not at the house on the second. Now, it doesn't really matter because we know that the second is not the correct date, that Joe believes it was, you know, the fourth. So I don't know how he could prove that Dylan was not there. I have a friend who has said that Dylan has he has a mutual friend with Dylan, and Dylan said he was there when Kurt was killed. We know that Dylan was there. Now, of course, he didn't say he killed him, but Dylan has admitted himself to being there. And Tom said to this person, if you believe that Dylan was there the night, you're sorry, Dylan might say he was there, but he's lying to you because I can prove he wasn't.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. Again,
You
why
know?
not present that evidence, you know?
And why hold on to any evidence after all this time and say,
well,
like,
I mean,
you're
unless
keeping
it's
it close
about,
to the vest for the police that you didn't think did a good job in the first place? Like, it makes no
unless
sense.
it's
If
a,
you have some damning evidence, that would potentially break the case wide open, would it not? Like,
well,
Yes, of
I
course.
mean, the
just
only
not.
explanation is like when police hold evidence to see if basically a story is corroborated, like if somebody comes
Yeah.
out with a story and they've got
Right.
secret evidence, right? You know,
Because there are
that
people
like,
that like crazies that falsely confess, especially like with
right. They
serial
to kind of move
killers and
against
stuff
the
like
false confessions and stuff like that. And certainly Tom is somebody that could potentially actually have evidence he didn't disclose. We can't
Yeah.
say that he doesn't, although it doesn't appear that he has been like withholding any evidence until recently. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't, he didn't make statements about that I remember until very recently. So that is, you know, at least of note.
Yeah.
And the fact
Well,
that he's
plus,
been
did he never just?
controlling
Sorry, go ahead.
what? Oh, he's been controlling sort of a lot of this narrative for, you know, for many years as the prominent figure. I think that it's not out of realm to think that um that might be something that he wants to hold on to, you know, to
Yeah.
be the major player. Now, I'm not accusing him of that, but you have to be willing to look at that, you know. Yeah,
Absolutely. And, you know, the thing is, I think that he went from saying he could prove that Dylan was not there and prove that Joe was a liar to now just calling Joe names. And I think
right.
that's
And
just
we're not going to have a
unacceptable.
perfect witness here. And I
No.
think that it is very concerning that there are that Joe may be associated with some sort of like racism or hate, you know, and I don't, but again, I haven't seen any interviews where they've talked to Joe about it directly.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's not a symbol of like just general punk rock, like shock, fuck you kind of thing versus like I actually believe though that like a lot of things. But even if that is the case, that doesn't mean he wasn't there. That doesn't
Exactly.
mean that he didn't see like the things leading up to Kurt's murder, and like that, you know, we know he was dating Bonnie. We
Yeah.
know that he was around like
Yeah.
or, you know, so like he can believe whatever he wants. That doesn't mean he's not telling the truth right now.
Exactly.
And if you
Yeah.
care about, you know, if you care about solving this, then that would matter. That would matter to you a lot, you know? So I mean, the kicking and screaming about Joe's a Nazi, Joe's this, or this or that, like, I I don't I haven't heard any evidence from Tom that says this is why I know Joe is lying.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly right.
and correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Nope, nothing, not one thing.
You know,
And that's, I tried at the beginning to be very respectful towards Tom, even though we had already had the falling out because I believe Joe. But yeah, I tried to be very respectful to him right from the beginning, but unfortunately that degraded very quickly. But thank you guys so much for coming on and talking. It's been so much fun. It's like coffee Nirvana chat.
yeah.
And we're gonna have to, we don't live too far, so we're gonna have to do this at some point in the future. That would be great. I mean, we know that hopefully once this goes to trial, we're all gonna, hopefully head to Seattle and book up a
Yeah.
whole hotel and
Oh gosh,
and
that would be
right?
great. I want to remind anybody who might be listening to this. I wanted to just say that, like, we're all trying to work together, and like, and somebody has to be in charge, or like lead any group that is a group. And like, I personally believe that you're just trying to organize the information and trying to help, like, help people that want this solved, like, have avenues to discuss it, have, like, be able to contribute.
Yeah.
And that's really commendable, and I really appreciate it, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you guys so much. You guys have been super supportive and you've been really supportive of, Joe just as a human being. And I really appreciate that too. So yeah, let's keep in touch and thanks again, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
All
Thanks for
right,
having
bye. Thanks
Thanks.
for having
Okay.
us.
Thanks. Bye guys.